Hello and welcome back to another Arcanum Ventures 10-minute eye test. I'm Carmelo and this is my good friend and colleague Sasha. Today we're calling in from sunny Thailand for DevCon and we're going to be talking to you about Peaq Network, powering the machine economy with a scalable, green, decentralized layer 1 blockchain for DePIN and machine RWA. That is a whole bunch of buzzwords, but yeah, I've been hearing about Peaq for a while. What do you know about Peaq Network, Sasha?
3, we no longer need a middleman. So it's time we cut him out. It's time to go back to a peer-to-peer system. It's time we hand back ownership to the people. It's time for community-owned apps and services across every domain and industry. By us, for us, on a community-owned network. It's time for a global infrastructure revolution, from energy to mobility to connectivity and so much more.
Man, I know a little bit. You and I, we know quite a bit about DePIN, and we love DePIN. And we had some great conversations around that subject and how this is one area of the Web3 or blockchain industry that's interesting because it extends to industries and applications outside of Web3 and blockchain. DePIN usually refers to a decentralized network of hardware that collects data to solve problems in other industries like telecommunications or agriculture or healthcare, things like that. So super cool. Like that's adoption, right? We've been saying this for a long time. And Peaq is one of very, very few blockchain networks that are focused on DePIN, and we know that they've got like a very good number of enterprise partnerships and collaborations. So I'm really interested to dive deeper. That's about all I know about Peaq, actually.
Yeah, same here. I know surprisingly little about them, despite hearing this name for the last year and a half, maybe 2 years. And we had the opportunity to invest in them, but we ultimately did not. And I can't remember why off the top of my head. But yeah, I wanted to just comment real quick that we're seeing machine RWA, and I'm seeing this weird mix of DePIN and RWA creating this abomination, whatever you want to call it, buzzword that I don't know what RWA machine means, but yeah, maybe calling hardware a real world asset is kind of interesting and strange at the same time. Like it's like calling a Bitcoin mining computer a real world asset. It's obviously an asset that creates digital assets, but yeah, I'm curious to see what they're doing. We've obviously already spoken about IoTex. We even got the chance to interview the founder of IoTex. So there is other blockchain networks trying to appeal and cater to this niche out there, but we're not so sure what their tech stack looks like, what they're doing differently, what separates these two, or however many out there. I think like there's some major blockchain networks like Solana and Polygon, to name a few, that are focusing on DePIN as well. So it continues to be a pretty big niche. So I'm curious to see how Peaq's going to do and give our guesses and our feedback just with 10 short minutes. So anybody unfamiliar with the protocol here, we take 10 minutes to dive into a project that isn't obviously anywhere near the amount of time we would like for due diligence, but just trying to show what that process looks like, and then we'll give our thoughts at the end of the video. So stick around, and yeah, without further ado, I think we could dive in and check out the website and some of the information first.
Let's do it, and we'll start the clock. 10 short minutes, investor eye test on Peaq, right? Meow. Okay. We've got Crypto Rank up, and we all know Crypto Rank is the single source of truth in the world of Web3. Just kidding, but it is a good source of truth. They've got a lot of information here. Some of it we believe is self-reported and some reported by the team. But the first thing I see around Peaq is that there's a token price because I believe it launched yesterday. And
Yep.
they've got a cap table of maybe more than 30 investors on here. So interesting. Like we see Hashkey, Animoca, DWF, Moonrock, Borderless, Cypher, our good friends at Cypher. Like there's a lot here, right?
Yeah. And I don't know, we always make fun of how they rank VCs, but a lot of those tier 4 and even tier 5 VCs are probably better than some of the tier 2 ones mentioned above. But yeah, that's an impressive cap table. And I think this has been around long enough where people are, or VCs are interested in investing in this because they raised largely off the back of the DeepIn pump last year when DeepIn first came across most people's radars. So they took advantage of that and raised quite a bit of money and got a lot of attention and built their community because everybody was anticipating that DeepIn would continue to be a narrative, much like gaming last cycle. So we're seeing that that continues to be true. DeepIn hasn't really faded from people's collective consciousness just yet, if at all, and it continues to grow larger. So it makes sense that all of these bigger VCs chose to invest in this, and it's a blockchain. So there you go. Everybody loves investing in blockchains, especially VCs.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Shout out our good friends at Mulana Capital and Saris Ventures. You guys are doing them a disservice with that tier 4 crypto rank. Oof. But I do see we've got Peak over here, and let's go to the fundraising tab. There's always good information here. So they went with the launch pool on BitGet. There's an ICO on CoinList, which that's kind of the premier ICO platform. So it's interesting to see that. And they've got, let's see, where's the FDV? 330 million FDV. I think that was the FDV during launch. But right now, we're sitting at like a cool 5x, right? We're 1.6 or 1.7 billion FDV. And our goal for this eye test really should be to understand, is that valid, right? Because when it comes to a blockchain, you don't have time in a 10-minute eye test to look at technical white paper, understand consensus mechanism, security, all these technical things. So what we have to understand is traction. Like, is there going to be demand for this tech? Is there going to be activity on the network? So, that comes down to the partnerships, really, right, Mello?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's you hit the nail on the head right there because we can't really figure out the entire tech stack or even anything close to that. We can look a little bit into the token utilities for the actual token. A lot of them we probably can guess because it's its own blockchain. But yeah, seeing what their ecosystem looks like as they develop it, what are they doing to incentivize builders on their network to poach some away from some of the other DeepIn networks or the DeepIn focused layer ones that already exist, and how they're supporting them and what type of projects they're attracting.
Yeah, man, you got it. So, well, let's check out the website and see if we could figure out some traction. But already this is beautiful. I love this.
Yeah, it's a nice looking website.
Machine economy. I like this, and this goes back to this buzzword. I think that predated DeepIn, known as MachineFi, right? Financial ecosystems around a network of machines, which is really like that physical aspect of DeepIn.
Yeah, and then I'm also starting to see more and more focus on energy, green energy, and being carbon neutral at least, and sort of organizing power grids and the way we share or move around energy, which is pretty interesting too. Because I always assumed this would be more about Internet of Things and data transmission, but we're seeing a lot of interesting use cases every day growing as these deep in narrative grows and these deep in networks that are launching like Peak.
Yeah, and we see an interesting sort of portfolio of projects that are building on Peak. I saw Silencio, which um, that's an interesting one. I'm not really sure how that one's gonna grow, but FarmScent, Natix, and this gives you an idea of what these companies are doing, right? Peak is this infrastructure to collect data globally within a specific niche from physical hardware. And what they do with this data, what these companies do with this data is going to really drive the demand because the raw data might not really be valuable, but the insights taken from that data that can be used to solve problems, that's going to be valuable for these companies, and that will ultimately be valuable for Peak because it'll drive more demand for the use of those data products and ultimately more volume on their network. We do see, look at this,
Yeah,
50 plus DPINs building on Peak,
yeah, it
21
seems like they
industries.
really understand the assignment, like exactly like we just said before we dove into the website. So they're front and center. They're showing projects. They're doing a good job of showing who is building on their network because at the end of the day, they're only as good as the builders they attract. So they're showing that they have thought of this. They have a pretty robust ecosystem growing, 50 plus DPINs. I didn't know DPIN was a noun, by the way, but 50 plus DPINs on the network. Uh, yeah, that's certainly interesting. And they're doing quite a lot to promote them on their front page, which is great to see.
Yeah, I don't really hear a lot of people say depends as a noun. I mean, obviously, right? It's a network, but I've got 3 depends in my pocket. So let's check. Maybe there's a portfolio of like the list of projects that are building, and we've got ecosystem here. That's what I'm looking for. Here we
Yep.
go. And funny enough, here at DEF CON, running into a lot of these teams. Like I ran into Ado yesterday, and Blocksmove, one of our portfolio companies, really interesting project that's building decentralized mobility applications, who just launched in Nigeria. So congratulations to them. Chirp. Well, everyone knows Chirp, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty big one and probably one of the more promising deep in startups that we've seen in the last year. I don't know if they launched yet, but that would be a great video to make too.
Absolutely. But there's a lot of different projects here, and as you guys can tell, this is we talk about DeepIn in being the gateway for adoption, and this is kind of like enterprise adoption, right? Because let's take a look at what we're seeing here. We've got airline industry, we've got AI industry, we've got like noise pollution tracking, which you can potentially use that data for many different types of applications, mobile network coverage, RWA tokenization. Let's see, VPN services, mobility, green energy. So bringing in volume, bringing in activity from people, whether those people are just like, everyday consumers or businesses that are interested in that particular niche. This is what's going to drive demand for the Peaq blockchain. So already I'm seeing like a good amount of diversity here. This is what you want to see for a DeepIn network.
Yeah, yeah, you're seeing agriculture, drone delivery, flight tracking. So it just goes to show there's a diverse need out there. There's an appetite for uh, alternatives to the traditional way of in which we organize networks for data or power or compute, whatever you call it. So that's certainly interesting, and I do appreciate they've done a good job of demonstrating this traction, and it's still pretty early. So this is just going to grow over time.
Yeah. There's a number of ways we
Also,
can take this eye test now. Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say another thing to look. We don't have enough time, and we're not, the best developers in the world. But the SDK and their tech stack and how they
Yep.
appeal to the actual builders too, not just companies that are established and looking for white labelable solutions, but developers that might see and feel inspired by what they have to offer, and it might call them to build something that they haven't thought of yet. So some the new tomorrow's deep in projects, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that we had understood very well in speaking with IoTex is that they've been building a lot of infrastructure and a lot of products that are catering specifically towards builders within their network, because they understand that people that are creating these sort of deep in startups, like they're not Web3 startups, they're not crypto startups. They're
Hmm.
technology startups that are working in a very specific niche, like we talked about airline industry or green energy, et cetera. So they're experts within that industry, and maybe they need like some very very easy integrated blockchain products to analyze data, to distribute rewards, et cetera. So that's
Yep.
something that I think is important to look into in Peak, if they're also taking this approach in being that sort of builder layer for all of their deep in portfolio companies.
Yeah, and it looks like they're also like they're hitting all the targets like account abstraction to make this simple for traditional builders and users, and also interoperability. I think I saw something they're able to integrate with Cosmos and Polkadot, which is
Yeah.
really cool, and their EVM obviously. So looks
Oh,
like they're focusing on that pretty heavily.
there's our 10 minutes. Yeah, and we could dive into this deep. Deepin is a big one. We love it. And like I said, Peak is one of the few premier Deepin blockchain ecosystems. So you know that like this is kind of what the future of blockchain looks like in our minds. As a venture capital investment fund, as an advisory firm, we know that blockchain, like the future of adoption for blockchain, in large part is going to be by these sort of siloed ecosystems that cater towards a specific niche. And in doing so, like you're going to have a lot of centralization. That's kind of like that comes with the territory with, you know, offering services or products to privatized companies. But again, like that's what this technology is for, right? It's to improve things everywhere. So there's our 10 minutes, Mello. I think that was interesting. And now our verdicts. The Peaq token, is it something that you think you would invest in based on what you've seen? You want to go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to even dive into what the token does, so we're just gonna have to leave that to our imagination, and do our own research. But as far as the actual assignment, we just take 10 minutes to figure out if we would want to dive more into this, and we might be cheating a little bit too because we've been hearing about Peak and haven't really dove into it so much, but we have the kind of an idea of what it does, so it's certainly piqued our interest. Been waiting all
Ooh.
video to say that, but but yeah, I would say a thumbs up. Deep in, I'm a huge believer in. I think you are aligned in that. We're invested in some deep in companies. We think it's going to be a huge narrative going forward. I like how they have delivered information in the short time that we've been able to look at it. I like the focus on building an ecosystem. I imagine there's like a huge demand for this, and as more deep in projects come to market, they're going to have, a choice to make, and that's going to be which project, which layer one to entrust their company to, and having a specialized deep in focus layer one like Peak or IoTex or I don't know any of the other ones. I know Solana and Polygon, like we mentioned, are focusing on deep in, but they're not exclusive to deep in, so it might be more appealing for a deep in founder to look to the Peaks of the world. And this is sort of like an ETF for deep in if you think about it. So if you invest in the success of deep in as a narrative, then it might make sense to invest in a blockchain that's building an ecosystem. So I think it's definitely interesting. I don't have enough time to look into it in 10 minutes, but I would definitely do some more digging and strive to learn more about it.
I think that's an excellent take, and I love this analogy to an ETF because that's the way you should be looking at this. Honestly, we only took 10 short minutes to look at this investment opportunity, and based on that, I would give it one thumb up, meaning I want to dive deeper, and I'll tell you exactly why. Regardless of understanding what the technology is or not, there's validation in the fact that they've onboarded some big names, including Bosch, which is a massive enterprise hardware company, including some companies that we know are very professional and they're dedicated to building very impactful technologies. This should be an indicator alone that they've got the tech stack, they've got the infrastructure to support something good when it comes to decentralized physical hardware networks. So I think that this is potentially a good long-term investment because we're talking about natural adoption through product development, launch, and user acquisition, user demand. This is not something that you guys should think of as like pump, pump, pump to the moon in 1 year and then dump. This is something that's going to build long-term over time because they are serving as one of the few gateways into blockchain technology for enterprise businesses that want to solve real problems. So I think it's definitely worth considering. Some of the other things I might look at is the team background and the partnerships they've been establishing. This is a very big scope project, so we need to understand if they understand their resources in being able to move this company forward in multiple directions at once. The partnerships, I think, are going to give a very strong indicator of that. Want to understand the marketing as well because regardless of this being enterprise focused, let's be honest, it's still a blockchain, it's still Web3, which means they have to be communicative on the marketing and content side about what they're doing to be able to update their communities and keep that positive sentiment rolling. That's very important, especially with some of these open market dynamics with assets that are traded across multiple markets. So yeah, one thumb up for me. I like it. Something I would consider looking into and maybe buying and holding for many years. Not financial advice. Do your own DD, you fools. But yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point. Like, what I think it's if we don't have enough time to look into everything in 10 minutes, it's worth mentioning what we would spend time looking at if we did have more time. And you mentioned marketing and a few other things, and I would also like to figure out what their government looks like because they did mention they want to be super decentralized, and also the team because we don't know anything about the team for Peak. So yeah, I think those are all good points, and I tend to agree. We are not affiliated with Peak in any way. fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how it goes. But it looks like it's doing well so far. So congratulations to the team, and we look forward to keeping tabs on that. And anybody from the founding Peaq team that wants to come on and address some of these insights, more than welcome to join us on the Boom Room. So thank you for joining us today, everybody. Like and subscribe and do all the things below, and check out the links if you are curious about learning more about either Peaq or Arcanum Ventures. And thank you for tuning in from sunny Thailand. Have a great conference and a great day.
Ciao, y'all.